Paul Marsh, can you tell us about your background, and story, history in 4x4 Overland?
Well, it's a passion that started when I was about 19 and I was asked to go to Botswana by a company called Penduka Safaris, a guy called Isak Barnard. And he gave me an old 45 series Land Cruiser and I was going to work with him for a couple of years doing backup support and eventually guiding with him into sort of the remote parts of Botswana. And he's a legend. He taught me so much. He gave me the real inspiration for passion, for the bush, for wildlife. It was a great experience. And then with my mechanical background, which is engineering and then later on vehicle preparation, I started off in South Africa with a business, building vehicles for people, and then across to England. And that was in the 90s. And before I went to England, it was my dream since I was 10 to drive through Africa. That was my dream. I was going to do that with a woman, build a vehicle up, and I did that as Mandela came into power. Everything opened up. Africa just became all the sanctions were dropped, and we spent 1.5 years driving through Africa. So that gives you great opportunity to meet people, explore places. I mean, we must have driven 70,000 kilometers in 1.5 years, so it's a lot of driving. I destroyed a Hilux, broke chassis. I can give you all countless valuable lessons I learned along the way. And then you'd meet interesting people, which is for me is really the real passion, is the people along the way. So that took me into England, and there I set up a business called Footloose 4x4, and we started importing expedition equipment from South Africa. South Africa is basically the leader, one of the leaders in expedition equipment for overland four-wheel drive vehicles. And we've led the market along with Australia, and it's given us a unique position, and it certainly gave me a great start in England. And more people came to me for my knowledge and experience on building vehicles. And I developed a whole business in England for about 15 years, where we built vehicles, we serviced them, we maintained them. But it wasn't just about adding equipment to the vehicle. For me, it was about a person's dream. So on average, about 80% of my clients brought a dream to me. And I took that dream, and it's a real privilege to have someone give you their dream, and facilitate that dream from the vehicle to training to giving them support on their trip to after their trip, hearing their stories, seeing their photos, and then learning what went wrong and what we could improve on. So that led me into Australia. For a couple of years, a short stay in Perth, a very developed market there and a very interesting market. But then my yearning and passion to come back to Africa brought me back here 5 years ago. And I certainly believe that I'd sold my business in England. I believe that coming back to South Africa was a great platform to build expedition vehicles. So my clients are from around the world. I either consult to them in different countries where I share my knowledge and experience, or I basically will bring them back to South Africa. We'll buy vehicles for them here, we'll build the vehicles, they'll come out, we'll do training. And it's a passion, it's a lifestyle, and it's a great way to live your life.
And in terms of the logistics of moving the vehicles around, is that a problem?
Not really, because some of the clients, I will actually go and drive some of the vehicles for clients. I've got clients from different parts of the world. They'll ask me to drop a vehicle off somewhere, so it's a great opportunity to jump in a vehicle, head off to somewhere in Africa and go and drop it off for them. I've been very privileged. I've driven expeditions around the world. I built some amazing vehicles. We did a documentary series for Shell, actually, in England, and we built 2 vehicles, and this was filmed in a 3-part series called Driven to Extremes. And Driven to Extremes took us to the extremes with 2 vehicles, Hollywood celebrities, and these vehicles 2 Nissan Patrols at the time. We went to minus 60 degrees in Russia.
Mother Russia, I think I've seen that one.
Yeah, it's incredible when you go out there, and gosh, I remember one story. We sat with some locals and we were having dinner with them in their very small, humble home, and they shared something with us which looked like cubes of chocolate. So of course I popped one in my mouth, and I had to retain the expression because it certainly wasn't chocolate. I made sure the rest of the guys in the team took some, and it was frozen horse liver.
Sure. That'll warm me up.
So yeah, the stories are incredible. You know, Russia was one part.
Was that Siberia?
And we went from the world's coldest inhabited city to the world's coldest inhabited place. So yeah, 1,000 kilometers of pretty extreme.
And what sort of modifications would you need for a vehicle for that?
That was extensive. I mean, to do that sort of vehicle, you strip out the entire vehicle. You basically insulate the vehicle shell, because that's the capsule that's going to keep you warm, and you know, the windscreens get laminated with a second windscreen, like double glazing. The side windows the same, and then all the fuel hoses and electrical stuff is brought into the vehicle so that you can actually keep warmth. And the whole focus is to keep the engine, which when you start it runs on Arctic diesel. So it's not like any diesel we get here, it's designed for very, very cold temperatures. And then you have heaters to warm the fuel up, and then you have heaters to warm the engine up, because while you're driving there's still not enough warmth in the engine, especially if you stop along the way. So you've got extra booster heaters that boost the cooling system to keep it warm. And then you've got special heaters in the car that keep the inside of the car warm, more than just your car heater. So you're really developing a means to travel in this vehicle that's safe. It's certainly got to be reliable, so you look for simplicity all the way. And then of course you're relying on that. You know, there's a part on that trip where we went out of range for them to come and rescue us. So it's beyond a day's drive or a flight. So it's like, hey guys, you now need to be quite careful.
And the most satisfying part of that trip?
The people. You know, Russia is spectacular. I love Russia. I must have had a past life there. It's just amazing. Very remote. Harsh conditions. I mean, how they live and how they exist, and it's really tough. If you meet the reindeer herders, and they live under canvas, and we spent a night with them under canvas. I mean, that's surreal when you see how people live there, and the fact that the rivers are frozen and you drive on the frozen rivers. So you know, and then from there, that trip we went into the deserts at plus 60 degrees. That's
Your
hard.
body must take a bit of adjustment.
So that wasn't straight away. So we relocated the vehicles out of Russia down through Mongolia into China, and then again came back a few months later to film that section of it for the Driven to Extreme.
Is Russia the final frontier of serious 4x4?
It's one of them. It's absolutely one of them. I mean, it gets really remote, and I think what really adds an element of challenge is the weather, the harsh conditions. You know, you are challenged with your mechanical vehicles to make sure that everything lasts and actually things don't break. So, you know, the oils you use, and of course Shell were behind this whole thing, so we were testing oils out there. And it's really interesting to see. You don't turn the vehicle off, you leave the vehicle running for 2 weeks. You go to sleep at night and you leave the truck running. I built in a special siren, so if it did go off, it would warn me so I could go and start it. Because once it stops, it's almost impossible to restart it without properly warming the engine up.
And then the changes to the car going into that plus 60?
So then you change, so there we had to remove a lot of the insulation, not so much in the body itself, but you know, we had the shock absorbers insulated with the engine and a thick blanket like this on the engine and underneath the car. You really are trying to
You're almost going to take all the clothes.
take all, it's like just taking off all your clothing, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was fascinating. I mean, that was probably, for me, it was challenging developing vehicles for those extremes. And then from the extreme heat, we went into the jungle for 2 weeks in Malaysia, one of the oldest jungles in the world. And again, we had to modify the vehicles. You know, so that's, I guess, you know, what I've done over the last 30 years or 35 years is develop vehicles and go into extreme parts of the world on expedition. And you learn every time. You never know it all. There's always someone, my clients teach me, I learn all the time, it's fascinating. Some simple things that really work. So you begin to realize that, you know, keeping it simple, you know, and again I've applied some of those values back into my life and how I live my life, just keeping things simple.
And being able to live your dream every day, that must be...
Yeah, look, it's challenging, eh? People don't realize that when you go on expedition, it's not a holiday, it's tough work. You know, you change your environment, but the stresses, we come to work every day, we manage our stress because we know it, we're comfortable, we know your routes in. You're familiar with most things. On expedition, it's changing constantly. So you're having to adapt to different scenarios, different challenges, different problems, and that's a challenge.
And dealing with people as well.
Yeah, and some of the trips, I've done support for big expeditions where we've taken, one was 100 vehicles, classic cars, four-wheel drives, right around South America. That was 3 months. And then we took a bunch of vehicles and we drove from London to Sydney, probably 2005. So that was through Iran, amazing country, through Pakistan, across the Karakoram highway before the earthquakes. So that was an incredible trip, all the way down through to Singapore, and then ship the vehicles into Darwin and drive down through the middle of Australia. So part of what I've also got involved in over the years is classic car rallying, which is taking all classic cars, making sure that they are prepared to endure these harsh events, because it's an endurance event, and then providing medical. My ex-wife was a doctor, so we used to run trips together for many years where we'd go and support big expeditions on trips, giving support, medically and mechanically. So it's a big responsibility, because when things go wrong, and they do, I've had some serious incidents on trips and expeditions where cars have rolled and people have died, and it's not fun. But you plan, you learn from that, you learn how to prepare yourselves better, what to do, what would you do in the event of a situation. So all those experiences, you wrap up into training again. For me, it's a lot about sharing my knowledge, with people who are going to go out on trips. Sometimes I get youngsters and they want to do a trip through Africa, and it's fantastic, that spirit. But I want them to know that they're well prepared, so they actually feel like they can cope with situations thrown at them.
Now, Overland is almost the first travellers to go into these new Iran and Iraq and these great destinations that nobody really knows about or too scared to go to.
Look, I think if people are looking to do overland travel, should I say, has grown over many years. In England, in the time I was there, from '97, it really did actually change. You could see it. It was mostly off-roading and green laning, and then the Germans and the Dutch have travelled for many years. People have always travelled overland right back to early times. And you can't take away some of the trips that people have done. They've done some incredible trips in some quite arduous conditions. But that was sort of seen as the people over there do it, and it's not really easy for us to do it. Nowadays we've made it more accessible for people. And I've always believed the important thing is to take the full picture. And if you're going to prepare yourselves or work with me to prepare you, then you need to prepare yourselves completely. It's not just about a vehicle. And then choosing where you're going to go is also important, because you've got to build up your experience. You take big risks when you travel, and it's not so much dangerous. People think it's so dangerous. It can be dangerous if you're inexperienced and you take risks, but you mitigate a lot of risks and dangers by actually just following simple rules. It's like scuba diving. It can be deemed as the most dangerous sport. I reckon it's one of the safest sports until you break a rule. So driving at night is really, really dangerous. And anyone will tell you who's lived in Africa, you don't do it. At all costs, you try and avoid it. So, it has become more accessible for people who want to have a dream to do it. It's how you do it that counts. There are a lot of folk who've climbed Everest well prepared, and there's some who've climbed it ill prepared, and they've paid a price. So the ultimate price can happen. And you go unprepared on an expedition, and then you're expecting someone else who's prepared to come and dig you out and help you and rescue you. So it's about taking responsibility for yourself, your partner you're traveling with, going with the right attitude. That's really important, and having a lot of fun. People often come and they'll say to me, borders are one of the most scary times for them. I love border crossings. I get a chance to chat to the guys, and you go with the right attitude, you're prepared to treat them as equal people that you're going to have a conversation with. And hey, you know what? You can enjoy it. It's not a scary place. It's actually a lot of fun. And a lot of the situations I think that people find themselves in awkwardly are brought about by, maybe lack of understanding or maybe a bad attitude or nervousness or fear. And you can resolve a lot of that by preparing yourself properly.
And so a bit of the Yoba mentality in Mozambique, that must be a little bit sad to see.
You're always going to get a certain mentality. South Africa is an amazing country. We live, eat, sleep and drink bush and outdoors, and a lot of people will go out and they'll just drive out there and do things. I don't think it's so much a bad mentality, it's a case of lack of maybe understanding, maybe experience. People will all too quickly throw equipment on your car for you and sell you a lot of stuff. Do they have the experience to actually advise you on what you should be doing and how you should be doing it, and is that really right for you? I think it often comes to that. You're always going to get some people who challenge stuff and do stuff, but I think more and more the balance will come back when the people who take it seriously, and I'd say pretty much 95% of the people that I ever work with, because I make a conscious effort to build a relationship with the person, it's about having that right attitude. And I'll choose not to work with certain people if I feel that their attitude's not right, or they just don't have the same values as I do.
Do you find common dreams coming through from different customers?
Yeah, absolutely. People's dreams, generally, you'd be surprised. In living in England, a lot of people wanted to drive back to South Africa or down London to Cape Town. And sometimes I'd actually say to people, let's just ship your vehicle into Cape Town, and why don't you do a route from Cape Town back up into Africa, into East Africa, come back down to Cape Town. And that way you start off in a country that's pretty easy to learn. You get familiar, you get comfortable with your gear, your vehicle, and you build your experience. So by the time you get up into East Africa, more remote places, you're more experienced. And then you double back down, and you can miss out some of the more difficult places to get through. Some of it's more bureaucracy than difficult driving. So it has to be about, the dream has to be flexible, I believe, because situations change, and you have to understand what are your expectations. And I often say to folk, you're doing this amazing trip. You're about to give up not only your time, hard-earned cash. You're taking a valuable chunk of your life, and you want to invest it in a trip or an experience. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year. I've got a couple we built a vehicle for, they're traveling for 4 years around the world. And it's fascinating when you understand what people are doing and why they're doing it. And they really need to focus on the actual processes, so they're clear about what they want.
A lot of Toyotas outside. Is the Land Cruiser your favourite mode of transport?
I say it probably has to be one of the most chosen vehicles. In England, I worked on Land Rovers, and I had a business. We specialised in Land Rover repairs and work and servicing, and of course Land Rover in England is very big. It's a very, very capable vehicle. They just aren't as reliable.
Yeah.
So everyone who has a Land Rover will tell you pretty much the same thing. I wouldn't knock a Land Rover. I would just say that if you're going to drive that vehicle, you need to be more hands-on. They're comfortable. Toyota's got an edge because I think they're a bulletproof vehicle. They've got their problems too, but certainly it's well represented in many parts of the world. So service, backup, support, parts are there. And for most people, they don't really want the hassle of things going wrong. I always ask people, what are your biggest concerns? And most of it's about mechanical, having an accident, getting sick, things they can't control. Those are the real concerns. So if you can reduce some of those concerns, like having an accident with certain training and things, and building the vehicle safely. People build vehicles and the suspension's not set up, the weight's not correctly distributed. There's lots of things that people do to vehicles which you've got to look at and say, well, is this safe for one? Is it going to be secure? Will it last the trip? And is the client going to endure a lot of problems? So that comes through experience. We've all made our mistakes. Camel Trophy was something that I always had a dream of getting involved in. And I spent two seasons or 2 events, and you work hard, you get down to the last few, and two lucky guys go through. So yeah, it was a good experience, really good.
And those defenders, how do they hold up?
I mean, look, Camel Trophy, the Land Rovers.
I mean, those are discoveries.
Those are discoveries, but they had the Defenders, they had the Discoveries, they had the Freelanders. The Discovery was a good, strong vehicle. You know, the old 300 TDI, I drove one on many of my expeditions. And in fact, I did one that probably did many parts around the world on the trips that I've driven. I've sort of driven in my life north, south and east, west of every continent, and with most with different vehicles, but the Discovery certainly did me well. So it was a simple engine, so it was quite reliable in the sense that, you know, you could fix it, there were problems, but if you, like anything, if you know problems on a vehicle or with an engine, you can make sure that you either sort them out or you keep an eye on them. So that works. Very capable vehicles. They certainly, you know, were put through their paces. It did an awful lot for generating interest in travel overland. You know, like Ewan and Charlie did for motorbike, adventure motorbiking. I think those guys drove adventure motorbiking in a big way to bring it to the guy who said, hey, you know what, I could do this. And I think, you know, Camel Trophy led the way with quite extreme stuff, not for everyone, but it certainly opened people's eyes to, hey, we could get out there, you know. So overland travel's been in people's blood for, you know, since time really. It's just now becoming more of an industry. It's not really well controlled, so there's lots of, you know, people do lots of things to vehicles. I think in Australia it's a bit more regulated, what you can and can't do to vehicles. So, you know, it's a question of where you're going, what do you need, what don't you need. More often than not, I'm telling clients, take less kit, more experience, keep it simple. If you need it, buy it. If you don't need it, get rid of it. You know, it really is about that.
Is it almost double-edged sword because you're promoting overlanding, but if you promote it too much, the areas become overcrowded?
Yeah, I think more and more people will explore, you know, the more closer areas. So, you know, if you go up to Namibia, it's pretty well explored, and there are a lot of people doing Namibia, but there are areas in Namibia that are quite remote. So, you know, you need to have a bit more experience, and you need to be well geared up to go to some of those more remote areas like the northwest. You know, Koakaland is beautiful,
yeah,
stunning. You know, you'll know.
Angola as well.
Angola, exactly. Zambia is spectacular.
Zimbabwe's,
yeah, I've just been back. I've just done a trip through Zimbabwe, and it's great. Lovely to be back into Zimbabwe. It's a beautiful country and beautiful people. You know, that's the reality of it. So yeah, most people are limited by school holidays and time they can take. So there's a limit to how far they can drive north. You know, a number of my clients actually have vehicles that we build for them, we store them, and they fly in, pick up their truck, or we deliver it somewhere and they do a trip. So they might do a trip based out of Livingston, and they'll do 2 or 3 trips, and we'll just store it in Livingston for them, or we'll bring it back to Cape Town and do other trips. So it really, those people are going to be a bit more concerning about where they want to drive and what they want to do.
Are you seeing more high net worth sort of CEOs and such like getting involved in overlanding?
I see more people who are looking at a lifestyle, people who've actually decided that there's more things they want to do in life. You know, the days of working and people retiring at 65, 70, for some it's a reality, and for others they're going, well, you know what, actually I can afford to retire a bit earlier, and I want to do something with my life. I actually want to do something and plan something. So for a lot of my clients it became we used to reinvent them, and often couples, because always when I build a vehicle, both have to be involved. One will drive the dream, the other will be, and I need to understand that relationship. I need to understand what are the two of them trying to get out of it. Who needs to be working on it in different ways? What do they want to achieve? So sometimes you'll find that relationships develop into a whole new era. The kids have left, so now suddenly there's this massive vacuum in the relationship. People are winding up work, so what now? But now you give them a dream, it's something they can work on. They've got different interests, maybe it's photography, maybe it's wildlife, maybe it's writing, maybe it's playing an instrument. You can do that while you travel. So you can take yourselves out of a situation your biggest expense is going to be building a vehicle. That you know, the rest is pretty inexpensive, really. Traveling on the roads, it's not too expensive. So it does give people that opportunity to go, you know what, I can carry on living another chapter in my life. This chapter is going to involve travel with an overland vehicle. Why not?
That must give you a lot of satisfaction seeing a couple maybe brought closer together.
And I think all the career that I've done with overland travel has absolutely been driven by that. For me, it is about the clients I work with. You know, I'm good at what we do work-wise, building vehicles. I'm hands-on with the guys. The team that we work with here, when I came back to South Africa, I didn't want to set up another business as per se with staff and that, so I consult to my clients, and the company that you see around here, R&D Off-Road and GoBX. R&D, we've got an overland expedition side, and we're separate. Basically, I consult, project manage the vehicle builds for my clients, and they do the work. And it's a great symbiotic relationship because I choose the products that are right for my clients, not what anyone sells, and we decide how we're going to build that vehicle. And together the dream forms. The vehicle is part of it, the training gets brought in, the support gets brought in, equipment. You know, sometimes the vehicles, I go and I buy all the equipment with the clients, all for them, so that we're buying the right gear. As people say, I don't know what to buy, come and show me. You know, let's choose what we need. Well, let's choose what you absolutely need, and you can add to that later. And everyone's different. Everyone has a different need. Everyone has a different expectation. People travel in different ways. So it's managing those outcomes and expectations to make sure that they get what they need, and it's safe, it's reliable, and they can get on their trip and enjoy it.
And in terms of manufacturing, how much is the local beneficiation of the 4x4 industry? Are the shocks and stuff made?
So the things that we don't manufacture are like the suspensions. So shock absorbers and springs look, Australia has the lead in that department. Tough Dog, Overland Emu. There's some really good names that, you know, Coney. You can choose, you know, I don't need to banish brands around, but there are some
good brands.
No, they do vary. I think you've got to match. It's no point selling someone a cheap system if it's not going to benefit them. So you're looking at what is the client actually going to do with these vehicles. So it's really about, I think, understanding what are the client's needs, how they're going to use it, and then match that with the products you're going to advise. You know, it's no point putting in the best of the best and the guy's going to use it on a 2-week holiday to Kruger. You spend a lot of money, and you know, it's nice to have, but he doesn't need it.
So you'll do more of the combination side and less of the mechanics.
No, the mechanical side is as important, but so when you take a vehicle and you're trying to build up a vehicle, if it's a new vehicle then mechanically it's good. We'll look at certain modifications we make even to new vehicles.
Even just going to the bush for 2 weeks to Kruger?
Yeah, I mean look, most vehicles coming out standard you can drive pretty much anywhere. Okay. Why do we add stuff to the vehicles? Well, one, you're trying to create an environment that you can live out of. So you want to make everything accessible. You want to balance the weight out in the vehicle to make it safe. You want to make it security safe as well. You want to give people comfort in a good style that's going to work. So when we're changing suspensions, we're doing it because we're adding extra weight to the vehicle. So the idea is not just to pump the vehicle up and make it look good.
Yeah.
That's very much a different application where people will go off-roading and they have a very light vehicle, they have very extreme suspension setups. And I think often that's misconstrued around what you actually need. So you've got off-roading, you've got overlanding, and they're two different worlds apart. You know, the off-roaders will go and take their vehicle through the biggest mud hole they can find, and they'll do it well and they have a lot of fun. An overlander would think twice because he's got a lot more weight on his truck. He knows that that's got to get him home. Would he do it? Well, if he's confident, he might. But would he take the chance unnecessary? I'd say probably not if you don't have to.
Yeah.
Because the risks are quite high. So it really is understanding, you know, how to look after your vehicle is important. And what am I putting on this vehicle that's going to serve me? So we custom build vehicles here. So people come in and we'll sit down and we'll design with them what they want. It's very labor intensive. It takes a lot of management time to manage the process to build it, as opposed to just bolting in a system. And we do that too. There are clients who off-the-shelf products, You know, we have a fitment side and they can literally bolt on stuff and it'll serve their needs absolutely fine. But they're not going to go and live in the car for 6 months or a year or longer, where they need to have water purification, they need to have more thought to lay out, maybe more robust systems put in place, and also good understanding. You know, clients of mine have to come and work on the car. They need to know how to fix basic things. They need to be mechanics. They need to know what to do to pick up bad fuel, you know, how to cross borders, how to deal with roadblocks, what to do in the event of an accident, do a proper first aid course, how to manage communications. All these are sort of aspects of being reliable, self-sufficient, and taking the responsibility for your trip.
And do you have anybody coming with a blank check, wanting one of those big MAN trucks with the whole caravan at the back and everything?
You know, I do. I've got clients who've basically written me a check out to buy a vehicle and kit it out as if it's my own. It's a huge responsibility because you've got to get that expectation right. It's a privilege to do that. I think more importantly, it's about, do they need that? I've had people come to me, I've had to talk them out of it, you know, because it isn't really right for them, and what they're trying to achieve and the money they're going to spend doesn't always justify the end. So they've come along with an idea, they've got a thought. Money's not an object, that's not the point. The point is that really going to be right for you? Or would you rather balance it out between a vehicle that's smaller, that you can ship easy, store easy, no restrictions in certain game parks, things like that, but you're going to stay in a number of lodges along the way and have some fun there too. So that's also important.
Do you ever get people not listening to you and then regretting buying the vehicles too big?
Not often, because at the end of the day it is their decision. But you know, for me, you know, I can actually look and say I have been there and I've done that and I've made those mistakes. And so, you know, but you know, I've had one or two couples and they weren't prepared to take that advice, and I just look, you know, maybe it's better you find someone else to work with.
There's plenty of guys around the corner.
Yeah, you know, and I'm very clear about that. You know, it isn't about doing work just for the sake of doing work. For me, there's far too much of my energy and time that goes into this. As I said, you know, people pay me for my time. They don't pay me for my experience. That's you can't afford. You know, that's years and years and years of very expensive trips and hard lessons learned. So if you're going to give that amount of time and energies to someone, you absolutely want to know that they, for one, are prepared to listen to you. I don't have to be right, but we can talk about a solution that works for them. But taking the experience that I've got that I want to impart. And clients do some great research, which is fantastic, because there are things out there. The challenge they have often, they come in and sit down and I go, great, how confused are you? And they go, we just don't know where to start. We've read all the blogs, we've read all the books, we've watched all the videos, we just don't know where to start. And I go, yeah. So that's what I'm going to help you do. I'm going to help you distill what's right for you, because that's what all the reading and that can't tell you. You need to actually sit down with someone and say, let's understand who you are, what you're about, what you want to achieve, what are your expectations. And I think, you know, that's said for anyone who's, you know, as you say, who's our market? Our market varies massively. It varies from a couple, an old couple, one couple I built a vehicle for, Carl, a lovely couple. They were in their 70s when they started. Okay? They drove West Africa, that's tough, in their Land Rover, up through East Africa. It took them about 1.5 years. They arrived back, they phoned me from the port, and I said, don't even think of going home, we've got a show on, this is when I was in England. They arrived at the show, we set up maps, we had people sitting down with them, and all they did all weekend is share their stories. They went home, they came back, we rebuilt the vehicle, they did North and South America, it took them 2 years. Eventually he came back and I said, David, why? What's driving you? Now he's almost 80 now. He says, you know, Paul, I could sit at home and I could sit on my step, my porch or veranda, and it's empty. There's no one there who's interested in me. We live for a few people around, a few friends. It's not giving me enough to live for. He says, here on the trips I'm challenged, I'm active, I'm alive, people want to share knowledge, they want to hear our stories. It's very much a real situation, it keeps me going. And then he decided to drive to Australia. So it was very sad because in India he died in the sea. He had a heart attack. And his wife said to me, she said it was an absolute privilege and pleasure to do all this travel with this man. And they did. As a couple, they drove pretty much around the world in many, many places. And so for a lot of folk, you come back, you've done a big trip, your mates, if they haven't done something like that, they're not going to be able to share on that experience. So you'll get 10 minutes of their time. It's like, well, but it's true. You know, you can't blame them. They don't know what you've gone through. You know, you might have been away for a year or whatever. It's hard to relate unless you've done something. You know?
Does that maybe prove that the world's maybe a safer place than the news and everybody tries to portray?
Oh yeah, listen. You have to go and travel in a country and then disregard half the propaganda and stuff that goes on. It's sad actually, because news is there to, you know, fetch stories and sell papers. You know, well, papers less these days, but the fact is it's all the sort of, they create it. There's some very good news that people are very accurate with what they say. But when you get onto the ground and you go into a country and you hear about a situation that's happened, it's probably very remote, very isolated, but it's made massive news. Now everyone goes, oh, we can't travel there. Africa's a dangerous place. So, hang on, that happened in a small place, an isolated incident. Now you're branding the whole of Africa dangerous. And I think that's through ignorance, people who haven't travelled to these parts of the world, or people who've read the propaganda in the news, you know, and decided not to come, you know, don't come to Cape Town, there's no water. Well, hang on, there is water. You just got to come and join us and use it sparingly. But of course the media banished that out, and I mean, I know of restaurants that have closed and hotels that sit empty because that propaganda got out, you know, in the wrong sort of way. So it's very much about using common sense. I think the more you travel, the more streetwise you are in that situation. You know, like, look, traveling with a vehicle has a different impact as traveling by yourself. You know, traveling in hotel from hotel to hotel is a very different experience from backpacking. Equally, when you've got your vehicle, you've got an added responsibility, and you need to understand how to manage that, how to look after the vehicle, how to avoid situations that could be challenging.
And when you're leading an expedition, what are the sort of key leadership qualities that come to the fore that are essential?
I think a lot of it has to do around communication. I think, you know, if you're going to take a group of people, you've absolutely got to understand your group. You know, you can be a good leader. You need to know where you're going. You need to know the safety elements of it. You need to be well prepared. You know, that's in my books is basics of basics. The big thing is, though, I think people maybe get it wrong. I certainly did in the early days. Is not meeting people's expectations or not managing expectations, and group dynamics. You know, any person who's led a lot of groups will tell you that group dynamics change on a daily basis. And you've got to be a people's person to manage the group dynamics in a professional way. And yeah, you know, it is about a value system. It is about being very clear with people. We teach people how to treat us, you know, and I think it's important that we do that clearly. And you discuss roles, responsibilities before you go on a trip. And I've had friends who've gone on trips and it's all fallen apart because they didn't discuss scenarios. What if this happens? It's a big part of my training, is scenarios, scenario-based situations. We talk about it. So you've had an accident, okay? You've knocked someone over. Let's talk about it. Because when we've discussed that, and the reality sets in, you've actually got that program in your mind that goes, oh yeah, I've already talked about that. So, you know, a lot of the preparation for things we do on that is focused around that, because it just gives you that much more confidence to go, yeah, I've maybe not had that experience, but I've certainly talked about it in detail. You know, what to do if you have an accident. Very few people get that right. You know, in South America, on that big trip I did for 3 months, I was traveling with a friend of mine, an orthopedic surgeon, prominent surgeon in Johannesburg. And I owe my life to this guy because we'd been driving for 3 months. We'd had 3 days without proper sleep, if any. And we were on a route up through Uruguay on the back roads trying to catch the rally. We were the final sweep vehicle. Driving way too fast, way too tired, and I flipped the car and rolled it 6 times. I broke my neck. So badly that I've now got plates front and back of my neck. And it was a situation in that instance where I wasn't supposed to die. I should have at the accident, because 2 millimeters more and I would have been paralyzed from the neck down. And Mark, the satellite phone was put in the glove box that day. We always carry a satellite phone. I owe my life to that satellite phone. We got a military helicopter to pick us up to a hospital where a plastic surgeon walked in on a Sunday morning and stitched me up from there back to there, to a point where the best neck surgeon in the whole of South America operated on me, Mark Human. He watched the operation, and a man ahead of his time in how he prepared me. My entire focus for the next year was I was going to get back to doing everything I used to do. Everything. Bungee jumping, paramotoring, scuba diving, you name it, I do it. So that mental focus, a month later I was driving a car. And it's that mental strength, but it also taught me a lot about things that can go wrong, dramatically wrong. And I've had that on expeditions. So it's a life-waking call. So what do we want out of our life? Where do we want to go with it? Overland Expedition offers a great platform for people to go and experience life in a different way. Life in a way where it's going to give them some meaning. It's going to give them raw, real experiences. It's not buttered up. It's not made pretty. Some of the places you'll stay will be horrific. Some will be amazing. People will take you into their homes. People will humble you to your knees that you will not believe. You could be humbled just by how they treat you, how good they are to you, what they'll do for you in situations where it's adverse and you need help. Few people would do it to their own countrymen in that way. And when you're a stranger in remote places, people stop, they help you, they're there for you. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Do people have more time for each other in remote places?
Yeah. Sadly, this little device is cruel. And I think for a lot of trips when I go on, I actually disconnect off the grid.
Yeah.
It's actually invigorating. It's become such a focus for myself and my partner Joanne that we are so mindful of how we live our trips and our expeditions with technology. Technology is amazing. It's incredible. How post-restant, most people won't remember driving through Africa and someone sends you a letter and it goes to the General Post Office of Nairobi. You walk in there and you'll go, post-restant? And they go, yeah, pull out a big box, Paul Marsh, and they'll look through it. Oh, there's a letter for you. It's only been there 3-4 weeks. And you get your letters.
And that's quite a romantic way of getting a letter.
It is. So that's changed. I mean, that's no longer. Very few people experience that. On our trip through Africa, I had a compass and maps. We got horribly lost in Lake Turkana. We were going towards the lake, northern Kenya, and we had a handwritten set of notes, as we did for Ethiopia, because no one had been travelling to Ethiopia much. And we got one track wrong, and we'd driven the whole morning for about 4 or 5 hours, and we came back into a little village, and a little kid ran in. Hey, you're back! And I stopped and I looked at Nicky and I went, no, I didn't just hear that, did I? We'd driven an entire circle in the desert.
Burns a lot of diesel as well at the same time.
I mean, we didn't have the diesel to burn. We were really. So now, instead of taking the safer route, we had to cross the salt pan to get back out. And there were 2 tracks. There's one set of tracks on the salt pan driving across. And I said to her, right, let's go. And it's the only way we could get out. We had water. And there were 2 camels standing on those tracks. And we got right up to them and they just wouldn't move. And eventually I pushed them off. Just my gut said to me, push them off. And as they stepped off, they stepped up into the mud up to here. And we continued past. I have another situation. We're driving the Selous Game Reserve. And it's very wooded and, it was raining and, we're listening to some music. Just driving along, bumbling along a track in the Selous, which is beautiful. There was a section you could do at that time. There was a clearing ahead of us, but thick undergrowth. And we're driving along, and at this clearing, just before I got to the clearing, I hit the brake so hard that I nearly put Nicky into the windscreen. And at that moment, an aeroplane's wheel dropped in front of our windscreen and landed. I didn't hear it. Windows were closed, we had music on. Something told me to stop. And we would not have been here today, we probably would have killed the people in the plane. I can tell you any number of stories where situations like that have changed my life, my outlook, and wow. People all have them. Situations where, you know, your life flashes in front of you and you think, wow. So, you know, it's not all horrific and dangerous, but things happen, you know, they happen here too. But the reality is that, you know, you can become very connected. Connected with yourself, connected very much with nature, which is fascinating. More connected with people because you have more time. Going back to what you asked me, you absolutely do have more time. You make more time. It's important to sit down and connect with someone and have a proper conversation. In Kenya, when we went through they go, yeah, great, you are staying the night, not just for tea. You go, yeah. And the next day they look and they say, well, you know, we expect you to stay a few more days. And you just, that's how it would be. And when you want to leave, they go, oh, no, where's your route? Oh, no, you're going to go and stay with so-and-so. Just pitch up for tea, it's fine. And we were literally, Kenya was an amazing experience for hospitality, that colonialism of, you just come in, we'll look after you. You know, the amount of generosity and help and care and great experiences, you know, just beautiful. So you can't add a value to that. You know, you can't, it's when people go out on trips and I say, learn how to take a proper photograph, learn how to video. Don't come back with a video footage that's all over the place and you can't use. Because those memories are priceless. If you walk away from your vehicle, take one thing, your hard drive with your photographs. That's it. The rest you can replace.
And you've done a few trips with a famous YouTuber, Andrew St. Pierre. What's the difference travelling with such an experience overland compared to the leading into it?
So we're different. Our experience is very different. I mean, Andrew's experience is in southern Africa, and more recently he's travelled into America, and so he's got more global experience now. Yeah, we're different. We bring different strengths to each other, and I think that's what's worked. You know, we basically over the years, you know, we've created, you know, I hands-on build a lot of vehicles. I've done it. I'm trained to do that. That's what I do. But I've also prepared people. That's not what he does. Andrew is a phenomenal storyteller, and he'll tell you he does great storytelling. But most of his stuff is by himself. You know, he doesn't want to take groups. He doesn't take groups. He goes, he captures his experiences and he shares them with people. And he's good at video editing. He's a very good, you know, film editor. And great to work with someone of that caliber. But it is very much about, you know, that's what he does. So we're very different in what we do. That's why when we sit down and we do the workshop sessions, you know, we're drawing on experience that I've got hands-on building vehicles. But I've gone a step further in preparing the people for the vehicles. Yeah, maybe one day I'll put some YouTube stuff together.
Absolutely, and I suppose him and Ronnie Dahl and those guys must be good for your business, getting people aware of Overland.
You know, they're great for the business, and it's thanks to people like that. I mean, Andrew has probably got one of the biggest websites in the world, and he produces some great documentaries. He's done some great trips. Ronnie's doing the same. Scott Brady, a friend of mine in America, produces a very good magazine. Well, it's actually a coffee table journal called the Overlanders Journal. Amazing, beautiful read, fantastic, really high quality. Scott's driving the market in America and has done for a number of years. You know, so the Overland market with people who influence is quite small. You know, you've got certain people who are just focused on taking trips, but they don't build vehicles. So it's quite nice to be able to do all of it, and I guess I've been very...
Do you film any of your operations, yeah?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We film, we photograph. We certainly on trips and that, on rallies and experience, we take photographs, we film. You know, all of our rallies that we've done and Driven to Extremes was filmed. We did another trip where a good friend of mine in England, Mac McKenney, a Mac's Adventure, he and I put together trips. Part of Driven to Extreme was one of the big ones, and then the other one was we got given 3 Vauxhall Vivaro vans from the factory. And the idea was, Mac phoned me up one day and he said, Paul, where would you like to go? I've got an option to test 3 Vauxhall Vivaro vans. I said, really? He says, yeah. I said, hang on, really? He says, yeah. Right, I said, Mongolia, we haven't driven west east, let's do that. Let's go through the Stans, let's go right to eventually the trip evolved to go from the most westerly road in Ireland to the most easterly road in Russia. 3 months, 20,000 kilometers.
Is that a 4x4?
No?
Just a rear-wheel drive?
You don't want to know what we did to those vans. We pretty much, in fact, the Vauxhall, the MD of Vauxhall came to us before, as we were about to leave. So we didn't modify them. We put a skid plate underneath, special tyres. We loaded them to maximum load capacity those vans could take with gear and kit. There were 3. And we were working with the Help for Heroes. So part of the filming that we were filming was about the rehabilitation of PTSD sufferers. And we had 2 with us who were integrating their lives back into normality through this experience. And Max still does work on that today. And 2 very good success stories. A lady and a guy who had extreme PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But incredible and really great experience. And we've covered 21 countries, 3 continents. So you can look at that as a hell of an extreme trip. It was hard, it was fast. We were camping, sleeping on floors wherever we could scrounge place to stay. It was interesting.
And you've been around the world, but you still prefer to call Cape Town home?
Home's really where I sleep, so it could be anywhere. I loved living in England. I was there 18 years. I could have settled in Australia. My ex-wife and I separated in Australia, and I decided after that I wanted to come back to South Africa. I actually came to South Africa back for my school reunion, which was interesting. I went to Queen's College, and the idea...
Queenian.
Don't tell me you're Italian.
No, but buddy was at Queen's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a good laugh there.
No, Queen's was great school, and so I came back for my 30th school reunion. And
Robbie Kempson and the boys.
Yeah, and it was at that reunion that I actually came down to Cape Town, and I climbed Chapman's Peak, and I looked at Hout Bay and a beautiful Long Beach, and I just thought to myself, stunning. What am I doing going back to Australia? And the idea was to take a year out, and so you can imagine I lived an entire life, set up business, sold that, moved everything, moved to Australia. And when I left Australia, packed everything into what I had, into a storage, which was like a paramotor, motorbike, some tools and a few bits and pieces. And I came with a laptop, no phone, and a bag to South Africa. And it was one of the most amazing experiences to sit in an airplane and go, where do I want to live? What do I want to do? Everything was packed up, everything was closed up. I had an email address. Invigorating. It was just so powerful to have that experience. And then I came back and looked at South Africa, and I thought, my heart is here, my soul is here. I love Africa, I love the bush. I miss the bush, I miss the people, all people. I love our staff. Our staff is a great mix of fantastic people. I love them to bits. We have a great team of people. I had an incredible team of staff in England. They were really good. I used to travel 3 to 4 months a year. My staff would run my business. So, I always said to them, I said, don't begrudge me the travel, but, I will look after you. And
did you find Australia was a little bit overrated?
It's hard to say. It depends what you want out of Australia. It's an incredible country. You've got to adjust. I think if you come from South Africa, you will go back in your standard of living because it's expensive. It's not cheap to live there. So whatever money you take over there is not going to be worth what it is here. But you can make an incredible life for yourself there. It's different. If you're going to go to a country, any country, don't go with expectations. Don't take anything with you that you're not prepared to leave behind, because at the end of the day, people don't want you if you're coming in with expectations, with your way, your ideas, your attitudes. You've got to go and you've got to fit in. This is their country, and you are a visitor, guest, eventually work your way into become a citizen. The number of people who sit in countries and they bitch and complain and moan about the situation. If you don't like it, get out. Here too. If you don't like being in South Africa, stop complaining. It's quick. There's one aeroplane flight. Bugger off.
Exactly. There's a lot of whinging going on.
Too much. So in many respects, I find that hard.
And would you ever make your own vehicle here from scratch?
Yeah, no, I've got a few vehicles. I've got an 80 series Land Cruiser, which I bought in England, shipped to Australia, imported into Australia, brought back to South Africa, and I'll build that up into a great vehicle for myself.
But like a pull march from the bottom, from the frame all the way, the whole vehicle.
Oh, you mean stripped down last nut and bolt?
Yeah, like a prototype vehicle, so to speak.
I would do it if it was, so that the one dream I have is to actually drive around the world. I mean around the world, that means crossing the Bering Straits. It hasn't been done. Someone's crossed the Bering Straits, a friend of mine did it in a Land Rover, and I think one or two, but they haven't completed. Because Antarctica to Alaska is challenging. It's very river run and quite small amount of road network.
Alaska, that must sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I sailed through the Northwest Passage, we cruised through there, and it's incredible to come through that area between Little Diomede, Big Diomede, and where Russia and Alaska, and that's what you need to cross that. Now there's less ice. Now there's a bit more ice because the cruise ships are getting stuck, but at that point that's what you needed to get across. So the technology is not available. Petrol driven engines are too heavy. You need something like electric solar type vehicle.
So drive on top of the ice.
To float and be propelled across.
With 45-inch mud-turret tires.
A serious amount of flotation, but you could build something like that in a way which I think would probably be different. You know? And it's got to be a vehicle that can go to the size of a quad bike to go on very narrow paths. So it'll be something quite radical as a vehicle to achieve that through the Darien Gap, across the Bering Straits. That would challenge me. I'd love to do something like that.
Get a few hits on that.
Yeah, they need a lot of money. Yeah, that'd be very very expensive to do something like that. But you know, it'll be a fantastic opportunity to develop something like that.
And do you think our leaders in general would benefit from a couple of weeks in the bush?
I think foreign leaders would benefit instead of sitting there trying to tell us how to run our country and what we should and shouldn't do with different reforms and stuff. Look at your own country first, and then come and live in our country before you comment. It's too easy to stand on the sidelines and comment. It doesn't matter if it's a foreign leader or a person or anyone. Before you judge someone, walk in their shoes.